Action!
Hello and welcome to the Grudge Report. I'm Margaret Reeb of the SETI Institute, and I'm joined as always by Franck Marchis, who's a senior astronomer at the SETI Institute and also Chief Science Officer at Unistellar. And this might seem weird to you. It's kind of weird to us. We are in person.
Yep.
This is the first time that we've met.
In person.
In 3D, in real life. So it's great to see you, Franck.
It's great to see you, Margaret.
We get to talk and overanalyze the TV show in person here at the SETI Institute. We're also joined by Jill Tarter, one of our wonderful founders, and the planet Saturn. And you, the viewer, thank you for tuning in. Because we've wrapped on The Expanse, we are going to start talking about a brand new show that I'm sure many of you are excited about. We were both really excited about. We're going to talk about The Foundation. And in this episode, we'll talk about episode 1, which is called The Emperor's Peace. But before we get into the details, Franck, I know that you read The Foundation and that you love it, I'm guessing, from our conversation. So why don't you explain what The Foundation is?
You already say everything.
I did not. I said it's a book. I didn't explain anything.
So it's a book by Isaac Asimov.
Okay, I did not tell that detail. Okay, keep going.
And it's a book that basically changed my mind, changed my life, kind of. It's a book that introduced me to science fiction.
Oh, okay.
So for me, The Foundation is the foundation of my interest in science fiction.
So it's why you became an astronomer?
Kind of, yeah, probably.
That's great. Good
So
knowledge.
I read this when I was probably 12 or something like this,
Mm-hmm.
the first foundation. Then there is like prequel, sequel. There is plenty of foundation. I think there is 8 or 9 of them. Someone's gonna correct me, but so this is based on the main book Foundation, which is kind of the introduction to the world of Foundation.
Yes.
Which is remarkable because it's the first time in science fiction I heard we have a galactic empire.
Which is something that we take for granted because we
Star
see
Wars.
it all the time. Star Wars and
She
Star
loves Star
Trek.
Wars.
I do love Star Wars. And many other science fiction works have sort of been built upon the foundation that this laid, correct?
Yeah. And in this world, the galactic empire is made of human. I don't remember to have heard about aliens per se in the story. It's purely humans, and you see that in the show.
Yes.
Everybody is human.
Yeah.
People on Trendor, there is billions of people living there. There is trillions of people in the galaxy. They are all human.
Yes, we see some creatures on other planets, but there's no intelligent life in this universe that we know of other than human beings.
Maybe we're gonna see that later on in the show, but in this episode, definitely not.
Definitely not. So we could talk a little bit more about the world to paint the picture of this series before we get into the episode. You mentioned there are multiple planets because this is an interplanetary galactic empire. Trantor is sort of a planet that's turned into a city. It's the seat of the galactic empire. And there's all sorts of interesting stuff going on there that we can get into. People live below the surface, and there's this huge elevator that takes people from a spaceship down to the surface. And then I think the first planet that we see, because there's a slight time jump in this episode, is Terminus.
Yes,
correct?
Just at the beginning.
Just at the beginning, and I think just at the end. So we don't get too much of it, but it's a planet on the outer limits of the galaxy that's ruled by this empire. It doesn't have a lot of minerals. It's sort of bare. They say that it's orbiting a red dwarf.
Yes, that's.
We can talk about our thoughts on that when we get into the episode. And then we also have Synax, right?
Synax, which is kind of an ocean world.
Yes.
Very interesting planet with shallow water almost everywhere, apparently. And human there lives into these houses, small villages, which are built onto water. There's something happened on Synax. They talk a lot about the relationship between the priest and the fact that they hate science and technology. And you can see when you see the world that it's kind of it's a world which doesn't seem to have spaceship or planes or things like that. Everything is built on wood. So there is some kind of voluntary desire from a part of the population over there to make sure that they don't have technology.
They're off the grid.
They're off the grid, yeah.
Luddites, I believe. Is that the term? Maybe not. Tell me in the comments. But it's folks that don't like technology and they just want to be one with nature. It seems like one with water, perhaps, on this water world. So we have those 3 planets are in play. Do we want to talk about the characters or should we get into the story?
Let's go to the story. It's going to be easier.
Okay. So we'll get to Terminus later because, like I said, there was a jump. But in chronological order, the story begins with Gale, correct? Dornick on Synax, which is the planet we just talked about. And Gale has won a math contest that apparently has been going on for a long time. And it's very hard to solve because she's a genius. And because of that, she is an outlier. She's an outcast on her planet. And she gets on a spaceship and she goes to Trantor, which is the center of the Galactic Empire, like I mentioned, to meet a man named Harry Seldon. And can you tell us who Harry is?
So Harry is a scientist. He's a statistician at the University of the Imperium. So Trantor is the center of the empire and also the center of knowledge of the empire. Apparently, there is a gigantic library, which is the Imperium Library, and he does work there. And he created this new field of research called Psychohistory,
which is really cool.
Which is very cool because it's a field that allows to predict what will happen in the future, but not at the scale of a human being, but at the scale of a society. So it's basically, he's capable of knowing when something very important is going to have happened that will destroy the society, and he can also, using equations, see the impact of one event on the future of evolution of society. So,
which would be very handy.
Very handy, definitely. Very interesting science too. We can go back to that after. But there is a problem. Yes. Once again, we have a scientist who has a great discovery, a great new field, but we also have an empire.
Yes.
With emperors.
With emperors. And this is one of the major changes from the books, I understand. The emperor is actually 3 people. They're clones. And at any given time, 3 clones of the first emperor, Cleon the First, I believe, exists. And so the Galactic Empire is ruled, I'm assuming, by the 2 adult clones while they groom the young clone.
Exactly.
And I think, there are lots of parallels in our history where a scientist comes up with a new field that has a lot of interesting ramifications and goes up against the power of the empire. So the emperor, particularly Day, I believe, who is played by Lee Pace, doesn't like Harry because of what Harry Seldon is saying about potentially the end of the empire, the fall of the empire. And so Emperor Day wants to throw Harry Seldon in jail or perhaps even execute him. That's sort of the big question of the episode is what's going to happen to Harry when he goes up against the emperor. And then, of course, Gale, because she came to be a student of Harry or work with Harry, gets pulled into this mess as well. So she also gets arrested.
But she got arrested not only because she's a student. She got arrested because they want to use her to prove that Harry is wrong. Because she's one of the few people who understand the work of Harry, they think. And in fact, they show that she does understand it. And they want her to kind of disprove his theory.
Right. So. And she doesn't.
She doesn't. And just when they're about to be exiled on Terminus, because the emperor decided not to kill them for multiple political reasons, the entire station,
the Star Bridge, they call it,
basically part of the Star Bridge collapse, and the elevator that connect Trantor to space collapse around the planet. It's an amazing scene.
Yes, it is an amazing scene. And though I think at the end of the episode, they seem to conclude that the 2 people who carried out the attacks were actually from some of the outer planets who are not in great standing with the Empire. They're sort of trying to exert as much independence as they can. And ambassadors from both of those planets are actually in Trantor talking to the Emperor right now. And so it's sort of a lot of things are happening at the same time. But the attack, the way that the Star Bridge, which is very, very tall, falls, and then because the planet, there are so many layers of people in society, it cuts right through 15 levels or something. But the visual effects budget for this show, they didn't skimp on that. Let's just say it's very well done. Did you agree?
Yeah, totally. The visual effect. I mean, we this part of the show. They also when she depart from Synax, this scene is magic. It's a magical scene. So
yeah, do you want to talk about it? Because I think we talked mostly about the story, so the planets and the characters and sort of the bare bones of the plot that happens this episode. So let's talk about some of the cool science things.
Okay.
And one of that was what you were just saying, the faster than light travel that Gail has to take to get from her planet to Trantor, right?
Yes. So when she basically depart from Synax, the scene we see is a spaceship coming close to the ocean. She goes in it, and then the spaceship brings her to a bigger spaceship, and which has a very interesting structure. It's kind of empty in the middle with this kind of arc. And she goes into the spaceship, and they told her that they are going to put her to some kind of sleeping mode. I don't know how they call that exactly, because she should not be conscient when they do the
jump.
So the jump is shown, and it's amazing because they use a modern image. They use the theoretical image of M87 as a background.
A black hole.
So it's the black hole in the middle of the galaxy, and the structure is formed by those arcs moving very fast, and this form a black hole. So, of course, this is faster than light propulsion, so we don't know much about that. But probably what happened here is they're creating a mini black hole, and they use this black hole to travel to go from one part of the universe to another one, traveling through a wormhole or something like this, probably. I don't know, but deforming basically the space-time continuum. Instead of traveling, surfing on it, they basically make a puncture on it, and they travel through to go to one part to another one.
They're bending space like this.
Exactly. And this happened very quickly, apparently, because they don't exactly say, but it's a order of hours or maybe days, something like that.
And of course, because it's a TV episode, they have to condense the timeline. But even in the episode it doesn't seem like very much time has passed at all.
Do you remember the scene she walks up, right?
Gail wakes up in the middle of this jump. And I didn't know if that was simply because the creators wanted us to see what was going on, or because Gail has some sort of superpower that we aren't aware of yet.
I don't know. We will see in the next
Franck
episode.
knows, I think. And he's just not telling us. So we shall see. I will admit, I've read half of the Foundation. So I have a little bit of working knowledge, not a lot. By the next episode, I'll read all of the books.
It's the scene. This faster than light propulsion system is amazing because they use scientific images in it. Scientific kind of, not proven, but theory. Bending the space continuum to go from one part to another one. And they also put people to sleep, which is something also where we talk a lot about putting people into this stasis mode, so they don't react, or they don't age, etc.
They don't get hurt by G-forces.
Exactly. And in this case, they don't talk about G-forces, but they say it's something related to subconsciousness. And I really don't understand, but apparently when they travel, they go somewhere, and they say that sometimes if you don't sleep or put into the stasis mode, your body goes there, and your mind, your subconscious, go into another part.
Oh,
they say that. They mention this.
I did not catch that, but I love that.
It's extremely advanced, faster than light propulsion system. Something that it's beyond our reach right now. But we will know more later.
We will know more later, and before we leave this kind of part of the episode where they were on Synax, the reason that I invited Saturn to join us today is because that planet has some amazing rings. Did you see that? I thought that was a really cool touch.
Yes, Synax as a planet with the ocean on it, covering the entire surface of the planet, seems to also have rings and moons. And there is a scene where you can see the rings and you see tiny moons inside the rings. Those are probably Shepherd moons. So that's the moon which are in resonances. So they spin 2 or 3 times, while the other ones spin 3 to 5 times, etc. Those are called mean motion resonances. And they are very interesting because when they move, they basically shepherd the ring. And that's what makes those structures that you can see on some of the rings.
So the particles are attracted to the gravity of those moons and they follow?
The physics is way more complicated than that.
That's why I'm not a physicist, but I've attempted to explain
But it's basically, the particle cannot escape this cavity. It's a cavity, a gravitational cavity, and they're stuck in it. They can slightly oscillate, etc., but they will be stuck there because of the perturbation introduced by the moon.
Okay, so what I said was correct, except for they're not attracted to it, they're trapped by it.
Exactly.
Boom, got it. Okay, so that's a very interesting planet, and we know that there are water worlds, correct?
Yes.
We have 5 exoplanets that are water worlds.
So yeah, this is a water world probably. So it's located into the temperate area of the planet, of the planetary system. Sorry. So meaning that there is liquid water, but a planet entirely covered by an ocean like this, especially a shallow ocean, I don't really know how they do that, but.
Yeah, it was unclear to me whether it was shallow everywhere or I wasn't sure. And then later in the episode, Gail was talking about how she was trying to convince everybody that the ocean levels were rising. And I thought, well, if it's a water world, I don't know if that would really matter. But maybe there are shallow places where if it rises too much, people wouldn't have homes anymore.
But it's an ocean world. It's kind of a cool type of world that maybe we will find one day a planet which is entirely covered by an ocean. And yes, if there is continental plates, maybe there is water, but it's not that deep. Remember that Earth has been maybe not entirely, but almost entirely covered by an ocean.
For a period of time.
So it's not impossible that we find words like that.
Yeah, and we'll turn it into a water park.
But I do recommend for anybody who wants to just watch one scene of this show is to watch when she leaves Synax, because that's a very beautiful scene.
It's beautiful. And what is not beautiful, in my opinion, is Trantor. It's cool, but it's like I said, it's a planet that has been turned into a city. So it's cities. I think it's all one city.
Yeah, it's one city, an entire city.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were saying there were multiple cities.
No.
The top of it, they say, has some greenery left, but it's mostly the imperial family, other rich folks, I'm guessing. And then it goes layers and layers down different parts of society, like regular day people. Harry, even, who's this intellectual leading the charge on this new field, is underground.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to think about classism in that way. A lot of science fiction has dealt with classism in the future, but did you have any interesting takeaways from Trantor?
Well, a planet city may be something that will happen in the future if you continue to grow the population of our planet. We will have to build more cities, so it's not something impossible. I think Trantor has 40 billion inhabitants, if I remember the book, and in the story they mention it as well. What is sad in this planet is not only the fact that it's entirely covered with city, but that nature is basically reserved to an elite. Mm-hmm. And this elite is the empire and the surrounding of the empire. So, and they live on the surface while everybody else is working underneath them, making sure that the planet stay, but the empire continue to live. And that's one of the reasons the collapse happened. In fact, we see later that this centralization is a big problem, because as soon Trantor is affected, the entire empire is affected. So, for instance, Trantor, the key part of Trantor is truly this space elevator that connects Trantor to the rest of the empire with a system which is low cost. It's basically a gigantic, not a cable, but a tube. Okay, inside we have this kind of small spaceship elevators that move up and down. It takes 14 hours to go from the top.
Yes, I thought that was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and and on the top there is the base. So a spaceship coming from anywhere in the empire does not have to go on the surface. He can just come to the base and load Martian people or goods, supplies, anything, and then it's sent to the rest of the planet, to the city. So you notice there is only one space elevator, one base, and there is one big city. So the terrorist attack is not insignificant. It's basically destroying the heart of the system, of the Trento system.
Yeah, redundancies are a good thing for anybody who's going to build a galactic empire. I think you should have more than one port.
But they have 3 emperors. They already thought about that.
That's true, in one respect, but they didn't think about it beyond the blood relation between the emperors. So, yes, Trantor is interesting. And maybe since we're there, do you want to talk about psychohistory?
Yeah, let's talk about psychohistory. So, psychohistory has been invented by Harry Seldon. We don't know much in this episode about how he made this invention, but you notice that he's using this kind of tablet and 3D representation.
All gold, right?
It's gold, but it's made of this thin material that takes shapes. I don't really understand the technology.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
Like a beautiful for the show as well. So psychohistory is something that was invented by this guy, and he mentioned in the show that there is trillions of people in the empire, 3 trillion maybe, or 10. And that was enough for him to start doing some kind of modeling to elaborate this theory, which has an equation. So first of all, I'm pretty sure that the evolution of a technological species will not work with just one equation. That's absolutely no way. But hey, for the book, it's simplified. And Isaac Asimov wrote this in the 70s or something like that. So at the time, we didn't have much complex computers, etc. So I have 2 ideas for the psychohistory that I would like to mention. One is, Harry mentioned that it's been possible to create this theory because he could study this trillion of people. And that's remind me machine learning.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because you remember that basis of machine learning is the fact that we have enough data now to see the behavior of a system, or to understand the behavior of a system by analyzing basically the system and creating the background equations or concepts that will predict the evolution of the system or another system identical. So I think that's what that could be what psychohistory is all about.
Yeah, having enough data. And with machine learning, you have to have enough data, but it's also the quality of the data that goes into the algorithm, right? So perhaps he also just reached a point where he had good enough data, enough of a volume of good enough data.
He was located in the right place. He was in the library of the empire, which is basically an entire gigantic administration. Okay, so they get all information coming from the empire. The production of goods, the number of people who dies, the wars, etc. Everything is cataloged over there. So he was at the right place to create this, basically. He had access to that.
One side note, though, I love everything you're saying. I would be so annoyed if I was hanging out with Harry, because it just seems like something happens and he's like, oh, yes, I predicted this. Yes. Something else happened. Oh, yes, I predicted this. Can you imagine just hanging out with somebody who always knew what was going on and he can't tell you?
Yeah, I predicted you would say that.
Yeah. This is the last episode of Grudge Report. Yes, the psychohistory is a very interesting concept, and I can see how in this world, people would not like it.
Yeah.
They wouldn't, kind of for the reason that I just said, in a way. You wouldn't want one person to be able to tell the future about everything if you were the leader, and you didn't want sort of this cult of personality around this scientist who might usurp you, right?
So another idea I have for psychohistory is that maybe it's a very different concept, a completely different way of solving complex physical problems and understanding complex physical problems. And yesterday, my spare time between 10 and midnight.
Did you do a calculation?
No, I look about new physics ideas. And in fact, I didn't know, I discovered that there is this new idea called Constructor Theory.
Oh.
And Constructor Theory is led by a group in Europe. and they get grants from foundation to kind of test this concept. The goal here is, instead of formulating a problem with law of physics, initial conditions, and this evolution, what you do, you create a system into which you say what can be done and what cannot be done. Okay, so basically, imagine you want to study the evolution of particle into a magnetic field, where you put a lot of laws, a lot of axioms. That's important to say axiom because they're not demonstrated. They're basically facts, where you say a particle cannot disappear, cannot move in this direction, cannot do up and down, cannot oscillate, cannot whatever.
Those are impossibilities.
And all particle can move straight line, etc. Those are possibilities. And then you run calculation behind it to create the right system. So you don't really understand the physics behind it, but you have a system that simulates very well the reality. And they are trying to develop this constructor theory because we are reaching a part now in physics for which we have quantum mechanics and relativity together, and those are opposite theory. They cannot work together. There is no way we can make a particle move, follow the rules of quantum mechanics and follow the rule of general relativity. So what they're proposing to do is to use constructor theory like that to create this modeling of particles which move at the speed of light in the extreme magnetic field, for instance, something like this. It's very complex. It's very new. I think the first paper came out like 5 or 6 years ago. So it's kind of a new idea. But my point is, I'm not saying that psychohistory is constructor theory based on constructor theory. It's just that there is new ideas coming in science regularly, and in physics especially. New way not only of studying something, but also of solving a problem. And constructor theory is one of them. So maybe one day someone will find a new way of analyzing civilizations and
problems the future issues that we might run into. That's fascinating.
I will put a link on constructor theory for the people who really would like to spend hours at midnight to read papers.
But they're trying to remedy these two fields that can't be remedied, at least as far as we know, that are just integral to our understanding of reality. So, I mean, it's not far off from psychohistory. I think that's a good comparison. Yeah. Anything else on psychohistory or the goings-on Trantor?
No, I think Trantor, that's all we're going to go back to Trantor often during the show.
Yes, so maybe we can just put a pen in it for now, because Gail and Harry are exiled by the Emperor, all three of them, but really the one that's running the show, to a planet called Terminus. And essentially, the Emperor's position is, go over there to this planet at the edge of our empire. You can keep doing your project, because if there might be a way to slow the fall of society and the empire, because psychohistory has predicted that there will be a fall, and I want to say 30,000 years of darkness, or a long time of barbarism, but
30,000.
30,000?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And using psychohistory, we might be able to slow the fall, and we also might be able to condense it to just a couple thousand years. 1,000 rather than 30,000. And the Emperor, who is skeptical, says, you can go do your thing really far away from me. If you fail, you fail, and you're really far away from me, you're not bothering me. But if you're successful, I will take credit. And Harry and Gail, because they're more ethical people, say, great, we're going to keep doing our thing, because what matters is trying to save civilization. And so they go to Terminus, right? Yeah,
they take the slow way to go to Terminus. They mentioned that. I don't know why they mentioned this detail. It would be a reason for the rest of the show.
Yeah.
But they explain that they cannot use this subconscious system that I described. So they have to use the slow one, which is not bad at all, because it takes only 874 days, so slightly more than 2 years, to travel 50,000 light years. So a quarter of the galaxy, no, half of the galaxy, because this is in the outskirts of the galaxy. Terminus is basically the end of the line, the last planet far away.
Yes, so they're taking like coach faster than light travel versus premium business class.
That's it's a choice from the emperor. That's what he wanted. It's interesting when you say that history is full of charlatans and false messiah.
Yes.
It does. In this episode, we don't see, but he does believe that there is something happening. So he wants to give them some kind of an opportunity to show they're wrong or right. But he doesn't want to be connected to this because the fact that the end of the empire is being predicted and announced by this person will probably produce the end of the empire.
Basically.
That's
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yes. And there's you can at me in the comments because this may be slightly controversial, but Harry is an idealist for sure. And there's one interesting conversation that he has with Emperor Day right before they get all the details about being exiled, where Harry essentially says, you have to end cloning. It's not a good idea. You're not introducing anything new. And that could be a way to slow the decline of the empire. And I studied political science, and I will say that the most stable type of government is a benevolent dictatorship, which, we don't go out. I'm proud to be a part of a democracy. We don't go out asking for a dictatorship, but there is something to be said about a benevolent ruler who can kind of make all of the decisions and keep things steady. Because I will say in this country, a lot of people have problems because we don't get anything done quickly. And that's because we have a high turnover of leadership generally, and different people come in with different ideas. And there are lots of really great things about that. But Harry's idea of, making this huge galactic empire a democracy or decentralized leadership, I'm not quite sure if that's the best thing, because new democracies are often the most violent civilizations. So that was just an aside that I had about Harry. I think he should stick to predicting the future and let the politicians figure it out. I don't know, Franck, if you have a response.
I know the rest of the show, so I'll let you discover.
Oh, what happens? Okay. We're going to cut this if I'm wrong. So enjoy it while it's online. Okay, so yes, and let's talk a little bit about Terminus, just a little bit, because there was some science. They say that Terminus orbits a red dwarf.
Yep.
That the climate, I think they said the climate is extreme.
It's extreme.
And that it's poor in minerals and metals. So I know a little bit about red dwarfs.
Okay.
And I will say that when I saw Terminus in the beginning and the end of the episode, it didn't really seem to me to be a planet orbiting
a red dwarf.
Because
of the color.
Yes, the color. Because red dwarfs are, and correct me if I'm wrong, Franck, but I'm gonna try and flex my planetary science wings. Red dwarfs are smaller than our star, and they generally are cooler.
Yeah.
And they have more wavelengths of light that appear red. Is that correct?
Yeah. They call the temperature of the surface is toward the red, so they look red.
Because it's cooler.
Yeah.
Correct? So the habitable zone of a red dwarf is closer to the star than if the star was bigger.
Yeah.
And generally what that means is that if there's a habitable planet close to a red dwarf, it's tidally locked. Is that right?
That's correct.
Generally. It could be.
Or it rotates very slowly, like Mercury around the sun.
Yeah, so the days could be really long and the nights could be really long if you're stationary on the planet. But that also means that plants would appear black, correct? Or yes, the surface, yeah.
And also, you will not have the day. You remember we see the scene where the kids run around and they leave in the morning, they do these things, and then they leave in the afternoon. And in the afternoon, one of them is being found by her. The day lasted something like 12 hours. So if the planet is tidally locked, the day should last way more than that.
Way longer.
Okay, I don't know the number, but I think it's the order of 20 or 40 days.
Yeah.
So that's not
it's not a matter of hours.
No,
it would be days.
Yeah. So that's one of the problem. I don't know why they really wanted to put this planet around a red dwarf, because it was kind of useless to have this.
It was just an aside comment, and you couldn't really see.
So what they say is that there is it's far away from in the galaxy. It's in the outskirts. It's at the edge, basically, and there is no metals. That's possible, though, because if you are a star isolated, it means that you have never been contaminated, or you're not coming from a cocoon of gas and dust, which has been contaminated by other stars. Remember that we are made of stars material, but in fact, more importantly, everything which is heavy in our body is coming from another star that died before our sun. So when the cocoon forms, first you have some very reactive stars, very young, energetic, that die after a few 10 million years. And they contaminate the cocoon of...
They fertilize it.
They fertilize it, sorry.
Contaminate has a negative connotation.
Well, we not be here, so yes, true. They fertilize. Thank you.
Fertilize isn't that good of an optional word. They add extra special sauce to the protoplanetary disk. Yes.
So we have silicium, carbon, iron, and everything super heavy as well in our body and around us, right? So since this star is far away, he probably did not have this surrounding of stars around when he formed. So it's possible that he didn't have this. He has a lack of metallicity, a lack of metal. Okay, so that's a good point. That's a positive part of the show. And I mentioned this. And then the seasons are tough. That could be due by the rotation, for instance, but that's not the case. So as I mentioned previously, or it could be also due to the fact that the planet is basically straight. It's not like Saturn here. It's not tilted. It's like straight in front of the sun. So there is no seasonal effect. So there is basically no spring and winter and so on.
Because this is what causes this tilt. Yes.
Yeah. While it's orbiting around
and it goes like this.
So that may be that. Or it's also because when you're around a red dwarf, you also have to suffer some kind of eruption coming from the red dwarf, and this is a serious problem for people living there. Probably they have to hide from X-ray radiation, strong solar wind regularly. But its terminus is the end of the world, so nobody really cares.
Nobody really cares. Yeah, I mean, I believe that red dwarfs, those types of stars, are quite abundant in the universe.
Yes, they are the most abundant.
Yes. So in terms of SETI, or looking for life beyond Earth, it would be interesting if there was life on a red dwarf, because there are so many or life on a planet orbiting a red dwarf, because there were so many of them. But like Franck said, those creatures that live on that planet would need to shield themselves from radiation. They would probably be very interesting life forms, unlike what we would find on Earth. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Probably life underneath the surface, so life that is basically connected from the surface to the underground or the ocean. The ocean can protect you from the radiation.
Yeah, because we did see little cute, almost like rodent life forms, but maybe they have like skin or shells that protect them from radiation. Who knows?
We need to capture one and
yes.
We will do that for the next
nice experiment. Don't add us, PETA. Yes. So should we talk about, as a wrap up, what's going on Terminus, or is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
No, let's talk about Terminus.
Yes. So we see at the very beginning, the show opens with a group of kids, like Franck mentioned, who are having a contest to see how close they can get to the vault, is what they call it. And it's the structure that's hovering, I don't know, a foot or two above the surface of the planet. And it looks like a couple, almost like a paperweight that's been inverted, like a pyramid of some kind, hovering, and there's a field around it to keep people away, or I'm not sure why, but there's a field. And the kid passes out because he gets so close to the vault, so deep into the field. And then later in the episode, or at some point, the character, blanking on her name, but she's a character in the book. Who is that? The woman.
Is that Salvo?
Yes. She is the only person who seems to be not affected by the field, and she helps the kid. And then she, at the very last, frame of the episode, the vault seems to open for her. So what's going on, Franck? You've read the book.
I don't want
You don't want to spoil it?
I'm not spoiling the rest of the episodes.
Yes. Well, I think from the book, and like I said, I'm about 150 pages into the foundation book. I'm pretty sure I know what it is. But it's very interesting because it's this, I will say Terminus is very different than how I envisioned it, because those scenes that we see on Terminus this episode are 35 years in the future versus the scenes that we see with Harry and Gale, right? So this is 35 years in the future. I think it's safe to say that the vault is probably somehow affiliated with Harry or the Foundation. There's something going on there. And
there is one thing we didn't explain is what is Foundation.
Oh yeah, go ahead. What is Foundation, Franck?
That Foundation is the project of Harry. He wants basically to create an encyclopedia of the knowledge of human being and the empire that will be stored and spread around later on around the galaxy, around the empire. So it will help helping to go back to civilization after thousands of years of barbarism.
Yes. So after the Galactic Empire falls, he thinks the key is making sure that the galactic knowledge is readily available, right? So he's writing a book.
So that's what he said.
This is his dissertation.
It's not really what he wants to do. We will see.
That's what he has been tasked to do. And I'm hoping in the second episode we see what's inside the vault. It looks too small for people. So I don't think Harry's in there like having a cup of tea. But we'll find out.
We find out.
We will find out. So what did you think of this episode? Are you excited for the next one?
I basically asked everybody at home to not talk to me for 1 hour and a half while I was watching it.
Which is hard because you have 2 teenagers. Yes. So there's a lot of noise.
And of course, they kept coming to ask me what I was doing. But, it's great to see this in a movie. I mean, in a show. Mm-hmm. It's definitely not maybe not as good as the movie, the book, blah, blah, blah. We can say whatever we want, but this is a story of science fiction. That's a game changer in science fiction. So seeing it as a show, it's great. And we like to mention that the daughter of...
Yes, Robin
Asimov. She's a executive producer.
Yes, she was very involved, or I don't want to say very, but she was involved with the production. And she's credited as an executive producer.
So I hope that they kind of kept as much as possible of the original Foundation in the rest of the show.
Yes, they did. They did make some changes, but I understand why, because this, and again, I have only read 150 pages, but even in the book, it hops between time, because psychohistory is about changes over long periods of time and predicting things that happen. And so it's interesting the changes that they made to kind of simplify that. Because you can't do a TV show where you're going tens of thousands of years in the future or what have you.
So what did you think about it?
Franck knows that I thought this episode the pacing was a little odd. And I don't envy the producers and the writers because they had a lot of complicated stuff to try and distill into one episode. But I thought, even as somebody who's read some of the book, it was a little hard to follow. It was a little jumping around a bit. And I don't think we have a lot of reason to care about the Emperor or to care about Harry at this point, or to care about, I mean, the attacks that happened, they were terrible, but I kind of knew what was going on, but I thought nobody's going to know who these people are, why they're doing this. So the motivations were not there for me. I loved the way that they treated science. I loved a lot of the dialogue. I really liked the characters, but I thought it was not as smooth as it could have been.
Okay.
That's my armchair expert opinion on the filming of this episode. But I love Lee Pace, and I love the actor who plays Harry, and I thought the actor who plays Gale, who's a newcomer, did a great job. And of course, Harry's son, Rach, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, was in Harry Potter. So he's a familiar face, and it's lovely to see.
I did not know that. I didn't notice that. Good. I'm glad I'm doing this show with Margaret, because we'll be just with me and another person like me. We will not have all this interesting conversation
all
about
of my
the actors.
sprinkling of random commentary. Yes, I think the guy who plays Harry Seldon was in The Crown. So, have you seen The Crown?
Yes.
Okay. We'll have to talk about that on our own time because it's not very scientific. Yeah, do you have any other thoughts or hopes? Or I know that you know what happens, but
no.
Have you seen the second episode?
No, I did not watch the second episode because I didn't want to mix them up while we are talking. We'd be kind of sad that I revealed the second episode without noticing. So, yeah, let's do the second episode next week or in 2 weeks. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll probably try and do it soon because it's out, right? Yeah. So, you will hear more from us on this amazing world and on psychohistory and on ringed planets like Saturn. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this. Please let us know what you think in the comments below. We're super excited also to bring this to you from the SETI Institute. And the SETI Institute is behind all of the Grudge Report, whether you watch our episodes about The Expanse or Star Trek Discovery or any of the other awesome videos on this channel. And please peruse the links below to get to know the SETI Institute, to check out our other videos. And if you are so inclined, please shoot us a donation because we are a nonprofit. We are concerned with finding life in the universe, understanding it, and understanding its prevalence. So if you like the foundation, I'm sure you'll like our mission. Check us out. Drop us a couple dollars if you can. Get involved. We would love to hear more from you. So until next time, I'm Margaret. This is Franck, and happy Saturn.
Bye.